It started on a cold Saturday evening in downtown Seattle. The streets glowed under soft rain, and the sound of distant laughter mixed with the hum of passing cars. Lena Walker wasn't planning to go out. She had canceled on her friend twice already, but that night, she just couldn't stay in. Something in her heart told her to step out just for a little while. She slipped into her old denim jacket, grabbed her umbrella, and walked toward the small cafe on Pine Street. The place was cozy, filled with strangers escaping the drizzle and the chill. She ordered chamomile tea and found a corner seat near the window, the kind where you could quietly disappear into your thoughts while watching the world go by. But before she could settle, someone asked softly, "Is this seat taken?" Lena looked up. A man stood there, holding a cup of coffee, his dark hair slightly damp from the rain. His eyes warm and unsure made her pause. "No, go ahead," she said, moving her bag aside. "Thanks," he smiled. "I hate standing." He sat down across from her. For a few minutes, they both said nothing. The rain tapped gently on the window between them, like a rhythm meant for two people who didn't know what to say yet. Finally, he spoke. "Rough day." Lena gave a half smile. "You could say that." "I'm Daniel," he said. "Daniel Hayes." "Lena," she replied. "Nice to meet you, Daniel Hayes." That small exchange turned into an hour-long conversation. They talked about small things, first coffee, weather, the strange comfort of rainy days, then about deeper things, careers, family, loneliness. It wasn't the kind of talk you planned. It just unfolded, quietly and naturally. Daniel told her he was a freelance architect, new to the city, still trying to make Seattle feel like home. He had moved from Boston 6 months earlier for work, but most nights, he said, he still felt like an outsider. Lena understood that feeling. She had lived in Seattle her whole life, but lately felt like a guest in her own story, watching other people move forward while she stood still. Her voice softened when she admitted, "Sometimes I miss the days when life felt simple, before everything became about deadlines and expectations." Daniel nodded slowly. "Yeah, it's easy to forget how to just breathe." There was something steady about his presence, no rush, no judgment, just quiet attention. It made her feel strangely at ease, like the rain outside was washing away the noise of everything else. They laughed about small things too. The terrible parking in the city, the way people pretended to love the rain, the mystery of why every cafe playlist in Seattle sounded the same. When the barista called out that they were closing, Lena realized how long they'd been sitting there. She laughed softly. "Guess we lost track of time." "Yeah," Daniel said, glancing at his watch. "It's already 11. They walked out together, umbrellas brushing in the light rain. The night air smelled of wet pavement and possibility. At the corner, they stopped under a flickering streetlight. "Well," Lena said, "this was unexpected." "Unexpected's not always bad," he replied. His voice was gentle but firm, like he wanted to say more but wasn't sure if he should. For a moment, neither of them moved. The city felt quiet, like it was holding its breath. If you're enjoying this story so far, please like the video and subscribe for more heartfelt tales. Daniel finally spoke. "Would you like to grab coffee again sometime?" Lena hesitated. She wasn't sure if she was ready for anything new, but something about him, his calm, his kindness, made her want to say yes. She smiled. "Maybe." Daniel chuckled. "Maybe's a start." They lingered there for a moment longer, unsure how to end something that felt too natural to interrupt. Lena tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, watching his reflection ripple in the puddle at their feet. "Good night, Daniel Hayes," she said softly. "Good night, Lena Walker." They parted ways, walking in opposite directions. Yet as Lena reached her apartment, she couldn't shake the feeling that this brief evening with a stranger might mean more than she thought. And Daniel, standing on his side of the street, watched her disappear into the mist and whispered to himself, "Maybe I'll see her again." Neither of them knew it then, but that night was only the beginning of something neither had planned for, and both would soon find hard to forget. Sunday mornings were usually quiet for Lena. She liked to start her day with a cup of tea and the radio playing softly in the background. But that morning, she couldn't stop thinking about the man from the cafe she had met, strangers before, people who passed through her life like small chapters. But Daniel felt different. His words had stayed with her, like the faint sound of rain that never quite stopped. She looked at her phone several times, half expecting a message, even though she hadn't given him her number. Then she laughed at herself. "You're acting ridiculous," she muttered. Still, she couldn't ignore how light her heart felt. For the first time in months, she woke up with something to look forward to. By noon, the clouds had cleared. Sunlight streamed through her apartment window, turning the wooden floor a warm gold. She decided to take a walk to the farmer's market nearby. Maybe the fresh air would clear her mind as she strolled between stalls of flowers and homemade candles. She heard a familiar voice. Lena. She turned. Daniel stood a few steps away, holding a paper bag filled with apples. He looked just as surprised as she felt. "What are the odds?" she said, smiling. "I was about to ask the same thing," he replied, his grin widening. "Do you always shop for fruit on Sundays?" "Only when I'm trying not to think too much." He laughed. "Then, we're in the same boat." They walked together through the market, stopping to sample jams and smell fresh bread. It was easy, almost too easy, the kind of comfort that usually takes years to build. They talked about books, about music, about how both secretly liked watching old black and white movies when it rained. Daniel admitted he had a soft spot for jazz. Lena said she listened to it when she painted, though she hadn't painted much lately. "Why'd you stop?" he asked gently. She hesitated. "I guess I forgot how to be inspired." Daniel didn't push. He simply said, "Maybe inspiration's waiting for you to notice it again." Those words landed quietly but deeply. She didn't know why they meant so much. As they neared the edge of the market, Daniel's phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen, and his expression changed. "Everything okay?" she asked. He forced a smile. "Yeah, just work stuff." But his voice had a strain to it, something he wasn't saying. Lena nodded, not wanting to pry. "Well, I should get going. I've got a few errands." "Sure," he said quickly. "It was really nice running into you." "Yeah," she replied. "Maybe fate's better at scheduling than we are." That made him laugh, and for a second, the tension faded. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small piece of paper. "Since fate seems to like doing the heavy lifting, maybe it won't mind if I give you my number this time." Lena smiled, taking it. "I'll think about it." He gave her a look that said he hoped she really would. Then he turned and disappeared into the crowd, his paper bag swinging lightly by his side. She stood there for a moment, holding that note like it was something fragile. Maybe it was. Back home, she placed it on her kitchen counter, right beside her favorite mug. She kept glancing at it all afternoon, wondering if she should call by 7 that evening. She gave in. She typed his number into her phone and hesitated for a long moment before pressing call. He picked up on the second ring. "Lena Walker," he said, sounding both surprised and happy. "I was starting to think fate needed a day off." She laughed. "Guess I decided not to make it work too hard." They talked for nearly an hour, their conversation as easy as before. He told her about the project he was working on, a community library redesigned out, how it was falling behind schedule. She told him about her job as a freelance illustrator and how she'd been struggling to find clients. "Lately, maybe we're both trying to build something new," he said softly. "Maybe," she whispered. It was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "Would you like to have dinner tomorrow? Just something simple, no pressure." Lena hesitated. The thought made her heart race. But something about Daniel made her trust that this wasn't just casual interest, it was connection. "Okay," she said finally. "Dinner sounds nice." "Perfect," he said. "I'll text you the details." They hung up, and Lena sat there in silence, staring at her phone. She felt nervous but hopeful. Outside, rain began to fall again, softly against her window. And though she didn't know it, that small decision to call, to say yes, would lead her somewhere she never expected. Monday came with clear skies and a nervous heartbeat. Lena spent most of the day pretending not to think about dinner, but her thoughts circled back every few minutes anyway. She tried on 3 different outfits before settling on something simpler: soft beige sweater, jeans, and her favorite silver earrings. When 7 o'clock came, she arrived at the restaurant Daniel had suggested, a quiet Italian place tucked between a bookstore and a flower shop. The warm light spilling through the windows made the place look like a hidden world. Daniel was already there, sitting near the back. He stood up when he saw her, his smile small but sincere. "You made it." "Of course," she said. "I almost didn't recognize you without the rain." He laughed. "Guess that's progress." The waiter led them to their table, and the evening began with the easy rhythm of 2 people finding comfort in each other's presence. They talked about the little things that filled their days: his early meetings, her art deadlines, the constant Seattle rain that seemed to follow them everywhere. Lena found herself studying him when he spoke. His calmness wasn't just surface, it came from somewhere deeper. A steadiness that felt rare. At one point, he asked, "So what kind of things do you paint?" "Mostly portraits," she said. "I used to paint for myself, but lately it's been for work. It's different when someone else decides what the picture should feel like." Daniel leaned back. Sounds like you paint feelings more than faces. That made her pause. No one had ever said it that way before. Maybe, she said quietly, maybe that's what I've been missing lately. Their food arrived, and conversation flowed easily between bites. She noticed how he listened not the distracted way most people do, but fully. He looked her in the eyes when she spoke, as if every word mattered. Halfway through dinner, his phone vibrated again. He glanced at it, and that same shadow crossed his face, the one she had seen at the market. He silenced the phone and smiled. Sorry about that. No problem, she said gently, but you look like you're trying not to think about something. Daniel hesitated, then sighed. My mom's health isn't great. I've been helping her manage things from here, but it's complicated. Lena's expression softened. I'm sorry. He nodded. She lives alone in Boston. Some days are better than others. I keep telling myself I'll visit soon, but work keeps piling up. You sound like a good son, she said. He smiled faintly, trying to be. Something in that moment changed the air between them. Their laughter softened, and their words carried more weight. It wasn't just dinner any more, it was understanding. After they finished eating, they stepped outside into the cool night. The city lights shimmered off damp pavement, and a faint breeze carried the smell of fresh bread from the bakery next door. Want to walk a bit? He asked. Sure. They wandered through quiet streets, their footsteps echoing softly. Daniel told her stories about his college years, about how he once got lost in Paris, trying to find an art museum. She told him about her first painting exhibition, how she nearly backed out because she didn't think anyone would come. Did people come? He asked. She smiled. They did, and I cried like a fool after it ended. Then it must have meant something. They stopped at a small bridge overlooking the water. The reflection of the city shimmered below them, restless and beautiful. Lena leaned on the railing, her hair catching the faint wind. It's strange, she said quietly, how sometimes you meet someone, and it feels like you've known them longer than a day. Daniel's voice was low. I was thinking the same thing. Silence followed, not uncomfortable, just filled with something neither could name yet. When Lena turned to him, she caught a look in his eyes she couldn't quite read, a mix of warmth and hesitation, like he was holding something back. Before she could ask, he said softly, I'm glad you called, Lena. She smiled. Me too. They lingered there for a moment, neither wanting to say goodbye. Finally, Daniel spoke. How about I walk you home? Sure, she said, but only if you promise to tell me more about that Paris story. He grinned. Deal. They walked side by side through the quiet streets until they reached her apartment building. He stopped near the steps and looked at her for a long moment. I'll see you soon, he asked. I hope so, she said softly. He nodded, smiled once more, and turned to leave. But halfway down the street, he paused and looked back. She was still standing there, watching him. Neither waved, neither spoke, yet something deep and unspoken passed between them, a silent promise neither fully understood. And as Lena went inside, she couldn't shake the feeling that something in her life had quietly shifted. The following week moved faster than Lena expected. She and Daniel texted often, little messages about their days, shared photos of morning coffee, and the occasional random thought that made the other laugh. Every conversation felt easy, but beneath the warmth, Lena sensed something unspoken in Daniel, a hesitation, a distance that surfaced and faded, like a shadow behind sunlight. By Friday, he invited her to visit his apartment. Nothing fancy, he said over the phone, just dinner, cooked by an amateur who's better with blueprints than recipes. She smiled. I'll risk it. When she arrived, she was surprised by how simple his place was. A few framed sketches lined the walls, architectural drawings, clean and detailed, books stacked unevenly near the window, a small plant by the counter. Half alive but still trying. You weren't kidding about minimal, she teased. He chuckled. I move a lot. Haven't figured out what feels permanent yet? Dinner was pasta and salad, both slightly overcooked but endearing in effort. They ate while talking about travel dreams, places they wanted to see one day. Greece, Lena said immediately. I've always wanted to paint the water there. Daniel nodded. You'd love it? The light hits differently near the sea. Something about how he said it made her wonder if he'd been there before. His voice carried that mix of nostalgia and distance, the kind that only comes from memory. After dinner, he poured them tea, and they moved to the couch. A quiet moment stretched between them. Lena felt comfortable, yet curious. So, she said softly, are you ever going to tell me what's really been bothering you lately? Daniel looked at her, surprised. What makes you think something is? You go quiet sometimes, she said, like you're somewhere else. He set his cup down, exhaled slowly, and looked toward the window. I didn't mean to seem distant. It's just been a rough year. He paused, searching for words. My mom's health, yeah. That's part of it. But there's more. Lena waited, not pressing. Finally, he said, before moving here, I was engaged. The words landed heavy. He didn't look at her as he continued. Her name was Emily. We were together 5 years. The wedding was planned for last fall, but she got a job overseas. Said she needed time to think. A month later, she ended it. Lena stayed quiet. She didn't know what to say, only that his voice carried more loss than anger. I'm sorry, she whispered. He nodded. It's strange how someone can still feel close even after they're gone. For a long time, neither spoke. The only sound was the faint hum of rain beginning outside again. Lena finally said, I get that. Sometimes we don't move on, we just learn to live beside what's left. Daniel looked at her then, his eyes softening. Yeah, exactly that. The air between them shifted again, quiet, fragile, real. He leaned back, the tension in his shoulders easing a little. I didn't mean to make tonight heavy. I just didn't want to hide things from you. I'm glad you didn't, she said gently. Honesty's rare, these days. He smiled, tired but genuine. You make it easy to be honest. They talked a while longer, about lighter things, old movies, embarrassing cooking disasters, favorite childhood memories. The heaviness slowly lifted, replaced by the quiet comfort that only truth can bring. When Lena finally stood to leave, it was close to midnight. Daniel walked her to the door, hands in his pockets, like he wanted to say something more but couldn't find the right words. Thank you, he said. For what? For not walking away. She looked at him, heart soft. Sometimes the best things start after the hard stories. He nodded. Maybe you're right. Lena stepped out into the hallway. The air smelled faintly of rain, just like the night they met. As she walked down the stairs, she could feel his gaze following her, a quiet warmth lingering between them. But as Daniel closed his door, he leaned against it for a moment, eyes distant. He whispered to himself, she deserves someone, without unfinished chapters. And though Lena couldn't hear those words, she somehow felt their weight like a faint change in the air. Something in her heart told her this connection, as real as it felt, might soon be tested by what neither of them could control. A week later, Lena hadn't seen Daniel. Their messages grew shorter, and calls came less often. She told herself he was just busy, but deep down, she knew something was off. On Thursday night, she finally texted him, Are you okay? An hour passed, then 2. No reply. By midnight, she gave up and turned off the lights. But just as she was about to drift asleep, her phone buzzed. I'm sorry, Lena. Can we talk tomorrow? The next evening, they met at the same cafe where it all began. The rain had returned, soft and steady, tapping against the windows as if reminding them how this story started. Daniel looked tired, like he hadn't slept much. He offered a faint smile. Thanks for coming. Lena nodded. You sounded serious. He exhaled. I got a call from Boston. My mom's health took a turn. The doctors aren't sure how much time she has left. Her chest tightened. Oh, Daniel, I'm so sorry. I'm flying out tomorrow, he said quietly, and I don't know when or if I'll be back. For a moment, neither spoke. The sound of rain filled the silence between them. Lena looked at him, searching for something to hold on to. You don't have to decide everything right now. I know, he said, but I can't promise anything either. I don't want to make you wait for someone who might not come back the same. Her eyes glistened. You don't have to protect me from feelings I already have. He reached across the table, his hand trembling slightly as it met hers. You've been the calm I didn't know I needed, but my world's about to change again, and I can't drag you through it. Tears stung her eyes, but she managed a small, steady voice. Maybe some things are worth being dragged through. Daniel smiled weakly. You're incredible, Lena. She shook her head. Just honest. They sat like that for a while, hands together. Silence saying everything words couldn't. When they finally stood to leave, neither wanted to walk out first. Outside, the streetlights glowed against the rain. Will you call me when you get there? She asked. I will, he said. I promise. She nodded, knowing promises sometimes break quietly. He hesitated before stepping closer. Thank you for finding me that night. She gave a faint smile. Maybe it wasn't me. Maybe it was the rain. He let out a breath that sounded almost like a laugh. Maybe. Then, before she could say another word, he pulled her into a hug-tight reel, full of everything they couldn't say. When he finally stepped back, his eyes shone. Goodbye, Lena, she whispered. Goodbye, Daniel. He turned, walking away through the mist, his figure fading into the blur of headlights and rain. Lena stood under the cafe's awning, long after he was gone, her hands still warm from where he had held them. She didn't cry, not then. She just watched the rain, wondering if some connections were meant to stay unfinished, beautiful in their incompleteness. Weeks passed. She kept painting, first to distract herself, then because she realized the colors somehow carried pieces of him. Each brushstroke felt like memory, soft and bittersweet. Then one morning, as spring began to push winter away, she received a small envelope in the mail. The handwriting was unmistakable. Inside was a short note. Mom, stable. Staying here a while. Found a small design firm near Boston starting next week. Hope you're still painting. I think of you every time it rains. D. Lena smiled through tears. She walked to her window, watching soft drizzle blur the city beyond the glass. It felt different now, not lonely, but alive. Sometimes, love doesn't need an ending. Sometimes, it just changes shape and quietly stays. She whispered to herself, maybe one evening with strangers was never about how it ended, but how it began. And as the rain fell, steady and calm, Lena knew that connection, brief or lasting, had already changed both of their lives in ways neither could ever forget. The end.